Hi, welcome back to Heather's Crochet Corner. In this short tutorial, it's going to be more of a supplemental for the Make It Home project for my live class that I'll be doing this Saturday, September 14th in Campville. So the Make It Home project, should those who are wanting to attend want to attempt to make this, we're going to be learning to do the granny square. So in preparation for this project, I made 13 granny squares. I choose to make mine in 4 different colors in 4 rows. For me, that's just easier to learn how to make a granny square if you're alternating colors with each round. Whether you do it, just in 2 colors and you alternate 2 different colors, or you get 4 different colors. Whatever you have on hand, whatever is easiest for you. You can certainly do them in one solid color, but for me, I just go back to when I first learned how to do granny squares, watching a tutorial, and the squares that the person was making was all one color. I found it really difficult knowing the position of where my hook was supposed to go. So I found that changing colors each round is just a better visual for me. So I teach the way that I learn. It's not a right or a wrong, it's just a matter of preference. So if you want to make your squares in one solid color, by all means, go ahead. But you can also make them in various colors, which is what I tend to do. So that is what we're doing here. I've made 13 squares, so you can see there's 5 squares here. This is just 1/2 of the bag. The other half of the bag is off camera here. I'll show you. It's another 5 squares, as you can see. And then to make up the 13, I've got 3 singles. So I know that there's a variety of ways to attach your squares together. Again, it's a matter of preference. There isn't a right way or a wrong way. As long as you attach them in some manner that creates a tote bag, it really doesn't matter how you lay them out and how you attach them. So what I tend to do to make it easy, just for me, I tend to just put my first 5 squares in the shape of the letter X, as you can see here. So that's what makes sense to me. That's what I can remember. And when it comes to, well, all your crochet projects, you're going to see terms like right side and wrong side. And I've covered this in another video, but I'll mention it again in case this is your first introduction. The right side of crochet is your outward facing. So think of it like your t-shirt or like your sweater. The outward facing probably has a logo or a design, or it looks a bit better, and that's what you want outward facing showing. And then the wrong side doesn't look half bad. It's just not as nice and tidy as the other side. Okay? So you have to be aware that there's a right side and what they call the wrong side. So this would be the side that, doesn't get shown. It's going to be the innermost part of the bag. So the inside of the bag will be all of the wrong side facing, and the exterior, the external, what people will see, would be the right side. So when you're attaching your squares together in any manner, there's countless ways to attach your squares. You want to make sure that they're all facing the right direction, because you don't want a couple that are right facing, looking really nice, and then you kind of throw a wrong facing square in the mix. So just make sure that all your squares are facing the right way. So that's been covered. So what I've done is I've kind of prepped. I've kind of did 2, it's going to be a full bag when I'm done with it, but I've got a nice half one done so you can see. So this is the wrong side that's facing you right now. You're looking at the wrong side. So this is going to be my inner portion of the bag. So no one's going to see this. And what I've done is I've attached a button so you can close your little tote bag. I've attached it to the wrong side because what will happen is my other half here, this is the right side facing, will get attached over top of it. And then don't mind my little stragglers. I'm not done with this yet. I left it there on purpose so that you can push your button through like that and you can actually close your bag. Completely optional. You don't have to do this. I choose to do it. I will have a bunch of these little buttons on hand on Saturday. So if you want to attach a button like I have, you'll have one there. So that's why you attach the button to the wrong side so that when you attach the other half, it's the right side. So then you have both right sides as the exterior. So that's what's going to be showing when you carry your cute little tote bag when you're out shopping. Okay, so that's what I've done with this. I will keep it attached for now just to keep it from sliding around. Don't mind my stragglers. They will be obviously taken care of when I'm finally done. But I've left it intentionally done so you can see one nice half that's all been like weaved in with the ends. And I've left this intentionally because these little stragglers, these little ends, will come into play when we attach these remaining 3 squares. So everything I do has a purpose. There is a method to the madness. You just gotta go along with me for the journey here. All right. So this is what your bag roughly will look like once you get your 2 sections of 5 sewn together, again, in any fashion. So what happens with these 3 individuals is you end up folding them into a triangle, like a little turnover pastry, okay? And they go into these open areas here. So you just fold them and they will finish off. I'm sure that'll stay, but you get the idea, right? So you fold them like a little turnover into a little triangle and you place them like that. So now you can see what your finished tote bag is going to look like. So that's why I'm keeping this project the way it is until my live class on Saturday, so that for me, I'm a very visual learner. I like to see things. It will make sense when I see it, because trying to explain this to somebody without a visual might be very confusing. It might not make sense. So this is why I teach in the method that I do, because it makes sense to me when I learn. And I'm hoping that other people will understand the method of the madness here. So that's what happens. So basically, you're folding your 3 single ones into a little triangle shape. They go into the extra spaces here. And what I've done for the strap, you can make this in any manner that you want. There is no right, there is no wrong. It's really what you choose to do and what you think looks best. So what I've done is I'm utilizing the very top corner of my square on each side, which is basically made up of 8 stitches, because you got your 3 double crochets. There's 2 chains that separate this cluster of double crochets and this set of 3. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You've got 8 spaces that you're working with. So what I've done is I've opted to use the same color as the outside round. You don't have to. You can make your straps any color you want. You don't have to follow what I'm doing. You can create your own bag and your own color pattern. I think I went and I did 10. I did 10 chains because I counted for the 8 that were here, and I did 2 more because I wanted to have a turning chain and then make sure I had enough. So I had 8 stitches to work with. And what I did was I just did a single crochet, and I did it back loop only. So it gives you this alternating sort of pattern. It gives you a bit of a stretch. So when you're carrying something, it has a bit of stretch. It'll stretch here versus the actual bag itself. So this is for all my projects that I do for my live classes. I'm using a 4-weight yarn, and I use a 5mm hook. So everybody who's new to my class gets a 5mm hook. So if you're returning, please bring your hook with you. You can use cotton yarn. Cotton won't have the same stretch and give as the acrylic does, but really you can use acrylic. It's perfectly fine. These squares are not blocked only because my tension is pretty consistent. So I don't need to worry about having my squares blocked. They're all the same size. You can block your squares if you find that your tension's a little off. But what I've done here, I'll undo this, show you things that are separate here. So again, I've arranged my squares into the shape of a letter X, because again, it's just what makes sense for me. And again, this is all the wrong side facing, because it's going to be the inner side of my bag, as you saw before. And so what I did was I tried to keep the seams on the inside. Again, you don't have to. You can use a different color to attach your squares, and if you want to have a nice raised edge on the outside, you can do that. It's, again, a matter of preference and how you want your project to look. But this way, it's more of a flat outer facing side. It's just kind of what I prefer. So that's what I've done there. I mean, yeah, sorry, back to the strap. I know I get sidetracked. I apologize. That's just how I roll, I guess. But yeah, I did, again, you're working with 8 spaces. I did 10 chains, and I did a single crochet, back loop only. I really didn't count how many rows. And then once I thought it was about long enough, because again, it's going to have quite a bit of stretch, I decided to just, I left myself a nice long tail to sew into this top corner here on both sides. And so what you'd have to do, obviously, is just maybe keep track of how many rows you've done, and that way you have 2 straps that are symmetrical before you sew them into the top corner. All right. But if you don't want to create a handle in this manner, maybe you're just not sure, you can go on to Amazon and you can get these cute little purse strap, sort of like replacements. And this one happens to come with a little clips. So you could essentially just put them into the top corner. You don't have to sew anything extra once you get your squares done. You just clip it in to the top corners. Oops. Sometimes that's a bit harder than you'd think. There we go, good enough. And this one's like very just adjustable. It looks more like a really thin dressy belt, honestly. So you can adjust the length of the strap. So that's also an option. So you can have that if you don't want to sew anymore or crochet anymore than what you've already done once you get your 13 squares done to get them attached. you can just clip on a strap there. So that's an option. I haven't done that. I just got that strap as a free item. I thought, you know what, that'd be a great addition to one of the tote bags that I make, but it won't be going on this one. So yeah, and then once you get one half of your bag and your square is done, you get the other 5 put together, and then again you fold the 3 remaining squares into triangles. Again, these long tails come into play. So what you want to do is you'd want to attach your squares, excuse me, as best as you can. I would say make sure the corners are taken care of and nice and secure. And then usually I whip stitch, but you can take your yarn and go through both sets of stitches in one direction, and then you can go back through the other direction, like it's a typical sewing. You can do that. There's like an invisible stitch, there's a mattress stitch, there's all kinds of different ways that you can attach your squares. So definitely look up tutorials on joining granny squares, and you'll find there's probably at least a dozen different methods that you can do to attach your granny squares. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's a matter of preference. Some will give you a nice little like raised border. Some will be completely seamless, and you won't even know that you won't even see where it's joined. I whip stitch because it's just easier for me. I'm not an avid sewer. It's just my preference. It's just easier for me to show somebody. But yeah, you would basically just attach this portion where it meets up, and then you can bring your other half of your bag. You would fold your square, but again, I would start using your leftover strands to attach. You can always use your remaining yarn to kind of fill in any spaces that are left. And then you would sew up this section. And you do the same thing for the other 2 sides. All right. But then, yeah, definitely utilize your extra strands to kind of, even if it's just to hold the square into place while you're trying to sew it in. And you don't even have to sew. You can use your crochet hook, and you can just continue to crochet your edges together. If you're more comfortable doing that, go ahead and do that. Nothing wrong with that method either. But again, you would join these 2 ends. You'd put your other half on top. You'd fold this piece here, and then you continue to join as best you can. So you end up having a nice closed section to your bag. Now you're not going to join here because that's where your bag would be opening, right? You'd have another strap attached here, and you would, let me just fold this, give you a better visual. Okay. And I'm going to fold this. Don't mind the stragglers, pretend they're not even there. You put that there, and you'd sew that in. So you're not going to sew through here. The only thing you're attaching is if you wanted to crochet and attach your strap to this top corner. That's all the attaching that you're doing on this upper half. So you're going to attach your triangle here, which will close up this end. You would need to sew up or crochet along this bottom edge here. This edge will be taken care of once you sew in your triangle. You would close up this edge here, and then this edge here is taken care of by your triangle piece. Okay, so use these little stragglers, hold the little triangle pieces into place, and by all means, knot them. Make sure that your attaching areas are nice and secure, because I assume you're going to be carrying things in this bag, and sometimes those things that you're carrying could get quite heavy. You don't want to have shoddy joining work, because then it will unravel and whatever you're carrying just may fall through. Now, I know some of you are thinking, well, is a granny square tote really the best way to make a bag? Is the best use for a bag? Because look at all these holes that are here. Aren't you afraid that things might fall through? Yeah, absolutely. But if it's just a little market bag, you're going to the grocery store, you're probably not, carrying anything that's going to just fall through. So if you're using it like as a reusable shopping bag or something super cute to bring to the farmer's market, you're probably not going to be carrying anything that's going to fall through. But here's a tip. All right. So if you're an avid sewer, which I am not, but if you were, or you had a sewing machine, you could get bits of fabric. I tend to get my bits of fabric from the fabric shop in town on Clothier. They're pretty inexpensive. You do get quite a bit. Just one quarter piece, and any color. So if you wanted to kind of try to match your color theme here, you could go to the fabric store and pick out a color that would go really well with this. If you could even use what you have around the house. If you've got like an old pillowcase, you've already got your general shape. You just have to kind of sew it in. So you can definitely be resourceful with things you have around the house that maybe you're not using. And then this would be the ideal time before you attach everything. Like it's fine that you have your two sets together that make an X, and this would be the ideal time before you attach everything to sew in a fabric liner. And do I have one? I do have one. Let me just run over here. And grab this. So this here is what I made. It's an 8 square. As you can see, it's 4 squares on one side, 4 squares on the other side. I make my strap pretty much the same way, because again, I just like to have an extra stretch to it. I've attached a button. Okay, attach my card. It's not important. What's important is that I've attached a liner. I did use a sewing machine because my hand sewing skills are atrocious. So I did get this fabric from the fabric store. I've attached a cute little handmade button on the inside just for an extra little embellishment. I have the button as I typically do to close it. But as you can see, I've attached a liner so that nothing falls through these spaces. Okay, it's nothing fancy. It's just a color that kind of matched close enough so that, when you do see the bag, kind of matches the color scheme. Again, your choice. It doesn't have to match at all. You can use whatever you want. But, if you really want to be fancy pants, and I'm just not at that level yet, you can add more pockets. You could add a zipper to kind of close it shut if you don't want to have just a single button. But again, it's meant to be as like a like a reusable bag. But if you wanted to use it as your like everyday kind of purse, then yeah, you might want to put something a little more secure than just a single button, sort of a large hole on the other side. So yes, this would be the time where you'd want to add a liner should you want to delve into that part of the project. Again, it's completely optional. You don't have to add a liner, but if you are concerned that your stuff will fall out, then yeah. So you just make sure it's enough to kind of cover the inside of the bag. It doesn't have to fit perfectly. Like this, excuse me, is a bit shy. It doesn't come all the way down. Don't know if you guys can see that, but the liner kind of ends where my thumb is. So I've got a little bit of space where it's not being used. But I think my thought process on that is that, you know, you don't want the actual material to stretch and overstretch, which is what acrylic will do. So I left it a little short, but if you were to use cotton, you probably could fill the entire inside with your liner, and it shouldn't give you any issue stretching. So that's another option for you as well. So yeah, if you were going to add a liner of some sort, now would be the time to do it, because once you attach everything, it's going to be really hard to try to get a liner in there at that point. So that's your option. And that's kind of what I'll be covering in the class on Saturday. I'll be going over how to make your granny square, and then I'll be showing you how to make this. I'll have this on hand as a visual. And if you don't want to do 13, you can do 8. Okay? And I just, rather than using the top corners for my strap, I just went the full length. So you can kind of put it over your shoulder versus just more like a hand kind of carry. You can actually put it over your shoulder, it'll stretch. So you can do 8 if you want to do that. And again, it's just, you're just attaching it all the way around. Again, if you want to add a liner, that's something I won't be so much showing you. I mean, I will mention and make mention of it, but I definitely won't have time to really get into depth about adding a liner. I'm just sort of letting you know now that it can be done, and that the best time to do it is when you haven't fully attached your bag. All right, so that is what I'm covering, making the granny square, having this as a visual to show you where your straps will go. And if you don't want to make the tote bag, that's okay. As long as you understand how to make your traditional granny square, you can make them into a scarf. You can just keep making single squares. You can attach them. You can make a scarf. You can go nuts with them if you want to when you're comfortable making them. You can make them into a blanket, which I've done a couple of those. You can make so many things with granny squares in various sizes. I tend to do 4 rows, again, because I know my sizing with a 5mm hook and 4 weight yarn. I know my squares are 5 by 5 inches. So for me, that's just easy math. If I'm doing a blanket, I just know I can do 4 rows, it's 5 inches. My brain doesn't do math very well, but it's easy math for me. So that's what I do. As far as the Make It Home project, I'm actually going to show you also that you can do a continuous granny square. Basically, rather than stopping at the 4th round, you just continue to go around and around and around, and that makes a wonderful blanket, whether you're doing just a small little lovey blanket for a toddler, which is usually about 12 inches by 12 inches, or you can do a baby blanket, which is usually about 36 by 36 inches, or a lap blanket, And I'll go through certain yarns and certain types of yarn. Was just showing you the two halves, showing you that if you were going to put a liner in, now would be the time to do it before you attach everything. And then just to let you know that your 3 remaining squares end up being triangles, and then they fill in sort of in this manner, if you can kind of, go along with me on that. And that would be pretty much how your bag would look. Again, ignore these little stragglers. They would be taken care of on the inside. You would never see those once everything is attached together. And again, you would have your little, if you wanted, again, very optional, you'd have your cute little button that would keep your bag closed. You would obviously attach a second strap at this location here, much like you did here. And that would pretty much be your little tote bag in granny square form. Again, that's 13 squares to make this particular style, but you can look up other tutorials for granny square tote bags. There are different variations with different numbers of squares being used. This is just one of the more popular ones that you're going to see. So that's just what I'll be showing in the class on Saturday. So I will conclude the video. There's nothing much more to say here, except for thank you for joining me here at Heather's Crochet Corner, and I hope to see you in the next video.